Hello and welcome to the Wholesaling. What the hell's the name? Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York Show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing how to grow your business. Question today is, can you wholesale commercial properties? The answer is absolutely yes. You can wholesale anything, pretty much. But let's define what a commercial property is. So how I define a commercial property is a residential property with more than 4 units. So I define a residential property as 1 to 4 families, and anything with more than 4 units is commercial, or anything that has non-residential components. So let's say a mixed-use property with a store, that's a commercial property, even if it's got 3 apartments upstairs. But certainly a commercial property is a big, an office building, a retail establishment, a retail row of stores, or an apartment house. Those are all commercial properties. You can absolutely wholesale them. But there are pros and cons to them. So I know people that wholesale them and have made tons of money on it. They go into a contract on a warehouse in Brooklyn for $10 million and flip the contract for $15 million. That happens. I don't work in the commercial space, but I have done some mixed use property. So I did a property in Baldwin recently that had a storefront and it had 2 units in it. And I assigned it to someone who took it even with the tenants because they were looking for rental income. And this one had good rental income potential. I have another property that I'm wholesaling now, and it is a similar kind of property with also 3 units, 1 store. So you can do it. So let's talk about what wholesaling is in case you're not familiar with it. Wholesaling is getting in contract on a property at a deep discount and then assigning that contract to usually a cash buyer who's going to either fix and flip the property or fix and rent the property. Usually that's the case. That's wholesaling, right? It's not illegal. It's completely legal. It's fine. The contract you go into with the seller has to state that it is assignable. Standard contracts in New York are not assignable. Clause 26 says no assignability, but you have to negotiate that and get it done. So it is absolutely doable on a commercial property. But here's some of the pros and cons. So the pros are you can make a lot more money. Usually commercial properties are more expensive than residential properties. The cons are that you don't have the ability to get So there's 2 cons really. You have the ability when you're wholesaling a residential property to put it on the multiple listing service, the MLS. And a lot of people can see it, and you're not allowed to represent that you own the property if you don't own it. But if you list the owner as the lister is not a good word. The person who's listing it as a contract vendee, that means someone who's just in contract, it's perfectly legal, it's fine. So there are a lot more people looking for deals in residential spaces than there are in commercial spaces. You don't have anything like that. There's something called LoopNet for commercial properties, but it doesn't have the same kind of reach that the multiple listing service does. So it's harder to actually find the people. So that's one of the things that makes commercial properties a little more complicated, because there could be millions of people looking. I don't know about millions. There could be a bunch of people looking for your exact situation, but reaching them is not as easy. Sticking it on LoopNet helps a little, but it's not the same as putting a residential property out on multiple listing service. Or if you're somebody like me who has a list of people that I know are looking for houses in Long Island, I'll just send a residential property out to them. Now I can put a commercial property out to them, but most of these guys are really single family guys. Now if you want to do this in commercial space, you absolutely can start building a list of people that are looking to buy commercial property at a discount that can pay all cash or use hard money, right? The complicated part about this, and it's almost less complicated on a commercial space, is that when you assign a contract, you don't the guy you're assigning to, guy or girl, whoever you're assigning to, does not have the ability to get a traditional mortgage, right? You can't assign that to a regular retail home buyer because it's just unlikely that they're going to be able to it's almost impossible to get a mortgage to do that. So you need to find a cash buyer, so another investor who's usually going to be the person that you wholesale the property to. Now, when it comes to commercial properties, there's a lot more people who are going to not get traditional financing. They're going to get a commercial loan, and the commercial lender doesn't really care. Doesn't have the same limitations that a residential lender does. But you need to understand that reaching those people on a commercial property is sometimes more difficult. Now, if you spend the time building up a really good buyers list, that can be something that you wholesale easily, right? It's not something that I ever got into, and I was surprised when I did start getting into contract on some of these mixed-use properties. Right? Mixed use means that part of it is retail or an office, and then part of it is residential. That there was a decent demand for it, so people are looking for it. Mostly people are looking for good income, so it does work. Now, I'm supposed to talk for another 5 or 6 minutes about this. I don't know what the hell I'm going to say. So I'm going to just deal with a few topics that maybe I haven't dealt with before. But Um, well, let's talk about the difference in how you finance commercial property and how you finance a residential property. So when you get a loan on a residential property, it's based on comparable sales. So if I see a house and I get an appraisal for it, if I'm going to try to get a mortgage on it, they're going to base it on what other similar homes are selling for, right? And they might adjust it. Maybe your house has more bedrooms than the one that just sold. They'll give your house more money for it. Maybe it is a smaller lot. They'll adjust it. But it's based on what comparable properties sell for. But when it comes to commercial properties, and you get a commercial loan, it's not based on what comparable properties sell for. It's only based on the net operating income, NOI, which is the gross rent minus all the expenses that the owner has to pay, and then some kind of cap rate to that. So what's a cap rate? Cap rate is a capitalization rate. So when you are buying a property, let's say there's $100,000 in net operating income, and you're buying it for a 10 cap, then you're paying $10 million for it. If you're buying for a 5 cap, you're paying $2 million for it, right? So the simple way to do that is take the net operating income and just divide it by 0.05 or 0.1, and that's how you get the price that you're going to pay. So commercial properties are a little more complicated because even if a similar property just sold for X dollars up the block, the lender doesn't really care if your property has significantly less net operating income coming in, maybe because your taxes are higher, maybe because that property has incredibly high rents and yours doesn't, whatever it is, they're going to look at the income from that property more than they're going to look at what comparable sales from. And the idea is, if you think about it, it almost makes sense. Maybe it does make sense. On a residential property, the borrower is considered the main source of repayment. So they're going to run my credit if I'm borrowing money, and they're going to check my income, and they're going to say the value is what people will pay for it, and you're going to pay us back because you are the borrower. But on a commercial property, a lot of those loans are non-recourse loans. That means that it doesn't go back to the borrower. So the property itself is seen as the primary source of repayment. So the net operating income from the building, right, which may be on a pro forma basis, so just to get deeper into the woods, what a pro forma means is it's not actual. So here's a good example. So I'm buying a 3-unit property, and the 2 of the units are vacant, right? And I'm only getting $3,000 a month rent. But I know that if I rented those other 2 units, I'd get another $5,000 a month rent. So on a pro forma basis, that property has $8,000 a month in income. So lenders are going to lend based on the NOI, the net operating income, sometimes on the projected net operating income of what the property could bring. Sometimes they won't give you credit for the pro forma projected net operating income. But any commercial lender is going to look at the income and the expenses before they're going to look at anything else. Now, they may also want the borrower to have good credit and show income. They may want that too, right? And they may want personal guarantees from the borrower. But in general, the thinking on a commercial loan is always going to be that the property itself is the primary source of repaying the loan, whereas on a residential loan, it's always the borrower is going to be the primary source of repayment of the loan. Now, if you're asking me how I know all this crap, I can tell you I had 17 years in the mortgage business, so I dealt with this 17 years for a long time. Now, so can you wholesale it? Sure. It's even easy. Well, something happens on a commercial property that doesn't happen on a residential property in New York, and that is very often you'll go into contract. You couldn't see my fingers. Contract on a commercial property, but you'll get a due diligence period. So they might give you 2 weeks, a month, if it's a big property, maybe more, of time where you're in contract, you control the property, but you can do your due diligence. Now, that's a great time if you want to wholesale to go find buyers. You don't get that on a residential property, and I get a lot of questions about this all the time. People say, well, I heard on the internet that if I go to that wholesaling is risk-free because I go into contract and I have a 2-week inspection contingency, and if I can't find somebody to assign it to at a profit, I just will get out of the contract. It's not how it works in New York, unfortunately. There's no inspection contingencies on residential property in New York. All inspections get done before you go to contract in New York. So every contract I go into, I have to either assign the contract or I have to close. There's no outs. But on commercial, you have a due diligence period, which also you can negotiate, and sometimes you have to put up a little money, but it's usually a soft deposit where you'll get it back if you change your mind during the due diligence period. So, and there are places that'll lend you money for soft deposits also. So you have that ability to if you found something and you thought you really had buyers for it, and this guy is selling it well below market, you could lock it up for a soft deposit that you can borrow from somebody. You'll have to pay back a little bit of interest afterwards, and you can then go out and try to find buyers for it. If you can't find buyers for it, you can just get your soft deposit back, and you'll pay a fee for borrowing the soft deposit. Sorry. So Actually, it's almost easier in some ways to wholesale commercial properties because of that due diligence period. It's a very standard clause in commercial contracts. It's never going to happen on a single family house, but it could very well happen on a commercial property. So in some ways, it's even easier. I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in my course, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. I changed the URL. If you're interested in finding a bunch of ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are interested in coaching, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Whatever platform you're watching on, please give me thumbs up, likes. They really help my SEO, my search engine optimization, and we have a question, Leonel. Do you or do you not include inspection contingency clauses when you contract while wholesaling in New York? So I just went through that. There's no such thing as an inspection contingency in New York. If you ask for an inspection contingency, the sales attorney is going to laugh and tell his client never to talk to you again. They don't exist. So I'm sorry. New York, every contract you have to go in hard. You got to either sign it or you got to close on it. Sorry, it doesn't work. It'll only work on the due diligence contingencies on a commercial property. So please keep the comments coming. Any comment I will get to. If it's a simple answer, I'll just respond to it. If it's a topic that I covered recently, I'll send you links to the videos. And if it's something I haven't covered in a while, or something that I never covered, I will do a video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching. I really appreciate it.